I'd like to share a little bit about initiatives of change. We exist to build trust across the world's divides. For more than 80 years, we've mobilized, engaged, and empowered people to make personal changes that lead to global change. Through our initiatives, campaigns, and a network of volunteers, we build stronger communities, a just, peaceful, and equal society, a sustainable planet, and an ethical global economy. A fundamental part of our approach is the practice of quiet time or silent reflection. Throughout this event, we'll be taking moments of quiet to reflect on what we've just heard. Today marks the UN Peace Day. Whilst the UN's theme is focusing on how we can creatively and collectively recover better for a sustainable and equitable world post-COVID-19, our focus is pinpointed to understand how we can better support Afghans who will be arriving in the UK after fleeing the Taliban takeover. We're also launching an urgent fundraising appeal in aid of newly arrived Afghans in the UK. In the chaos of the evacuations from Kabul, many had no choice but to leave with just the clothes on their backs and are now facing the prospect of building their lives here in Britain with little to their name. We are desperately need your help to urgently raise money to provide clothing and other essential items in the next coming weeks and months. We will work with our partner charities to distribute these items. We're also encouraging people to add a short note of hope as they donate to show our shared humanity and to help Afghan refugees feel at home. Please do look out for a link in the chat and it will be posted very, very soon. Oh, perfect. It's linked already. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first guest, which is Gulwali Passarlay. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Lightless Sky, an award-winning activist, a campaigner, a co-founder of The Lightless Sky, and he, not Lightless Sky, sorry, My Bright Kite. He's also ambassador of our Refugees as We Build Us program. His full bio will also be added to the chat in a second. But welcome, Gulwali. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Davina. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining us this lunchtime.
So you have about 5 minutes. I hope that's okay. I hope that's enough time. So please go ahead, share your story.
Sure. My story is in The Lightless Sky. It's 120,000 words. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to have a read. It's the story of my fleeing Afghanistan as a child refugee, traveling across half of the world, and unfortunately being unwelcomed in many of those countries and treated quite badly by the smugglers and authorities. And even getting to the UK after a year, supposedly, after facing imprisonments, crossing the Mediterranean, which was very dangerous. Our boat was about to be capsized, and spending a terrible month in the Kali jungle. My problems and struggles wasn't over. Dealing with the Home Office and social services who disputed my age and my nationality. So I had a few struggles along the way. It took me 5 years to get them to grant me refugee status. And actually, one of the reasons I was coming to the UK was supposedly my brother was here, but also I was sadly unwelcome across half of the world. And what has happened to me is not history. It's currently happening to so many other people, especially now with the situation in Afghanistan, which is partly been caused by the UK and the international community for leaving Afghanistan and Afghans to this condition and situation which could have been prevented and could have been avoided if things were done differently and a deal was not made with the Taliban perhaps. And yeah, I could get political, but I don't want to. I mean, it's heartbreaking what has happened. Right now, about 18 million to 20 million people are in need of urgent assistance. The UN Food Program says by next year, if action is not taken, 97% Afghans will be in dire need of basic necessity like food and shelter. And so basically the conditions, especially banks have been closed, our Afghan asset has been frozen in international banks. And people have lost their jobs, people haven't been paid salaries for months. So the condition on the ground is dire and it's really concerning. Of course, the human rights, lack of democracy and accountability, that's on one side of things, but on the other side, the survivals and having these basic necessities that we take for granted is very heartbreaking. The UK managed to take some people out through the evacuation process. About 5,000 were British national, about 8,000 were people who work with the British forces in the embassy and the government, and 2,000 or so were ordinary Afghans or Afghans in need. It was chaotic at Kabul airport. I'm sure you have seen the images, and we saw the people hanging on to planes. People have lost hopes and they had dreams, especially the young generation in Afghanistan who were, educated, skilled, and were running the country, had to flee and leave their country because, the US and the international community, pull a rug under our feet and left us to the wolves. And so I feel like not only do we have a moral responsibility and a legal obligation to welcome refugees, and particularly Afghans, but I think we owe it to them because the way we have, dealt with situations. The evacuation was, although quite successful on one hand, but there are still thousands, if not, hundreds, and if not thousands of people still stranded in need of protection, particularly judges, political activists, campaigners, people who work with the government, national security forces, and others. I see a report this morning that the British Defense Ministry have leaked an email list of Afghan interpreters and translators, which is very, concerning, and it's quite put people in more danger. I could go on and on. My journey and experience of, seeking refuge was not a positive one, particularly because of the authorities and the smugglers and how I had to go through 12,000 miles journey back and forth, being arrested and imprisoned and deported, and seeing a lot of inhumanity and unkindness. Afghans, like everyone else, we want peace. Today is International Peace Day, and most of us, we want to live in peace, and we, as human beings, that is our human rights, to live in security and have the basic necessity of lives. But sadly, Afghans in Afghanistan in the last 45 years have been in war and conflict. There has been insecurity and instability. People have been fleeing. We had 5 million internal displaced Afghans in recent years. And since the conflict or the recent Taliban takeover of cities, another million were displaced. So there's a 6 million internal displaced and about 5 million or so Afghan refugees in Pakistan and Iran, and also other millions in Europe and elsewhere in the world. So Afghans, the population is, somewhat between 35 to 40 million. And most of these people are refugees or internally displaced. And we have a lot of other crises as well, with addiction to drugs and poverty and, lack of jobs and opportunities. There's so many challenges. In previous government, we had corruptions, we had other challenges, but it was not, at least we had a system in place. So my appeal and request to the people would be we need to do more to welcome Afghans to the UK. There are people still stranded at hotels, the Home Office and the government hasn't really provided them with much support and help. People doesn't know what's going to happen to them. And at the same time, right now, as we speak, there's a bill going through Parliament, the Borders and Nationality Bill, which will criminalize Afghans, people like me who comes to the UK irregularly. Actually, I was criminalized, but there was a lot of hostility and I was seen as a suspect and criminal, but not to the extent that it is now, where people will have limited right to family reunification. People will be given temporary status. There's a 2-tier system the Home Office is creating. If you come through resettlement, which again, it's not very clear how people could come because you can't really apply for it, but you had to be selected somehow by the UNHCR and other agencies. There are literally millions in Afghanistan in need of international protection. And so this new immigration bill that is going through Parliament, it's cruel, it's inhumane, it will delay people's lives even further, put people in limbo. There are 3,000 Afghans going through the asylum process right now, and the Home Office is not in a mood to make a decision on their claims. They're like, we want to update a country guidance and we will treat everyone as individual, instead of saying, look, you can't be deported to Afghanistan, we'll just give you status. There are 3,000 to 5,000 Afghans who are failed asylum seekers, undocumented Afghans. There are a lot of other Afghans with insecure status. So the Home Office is not ruling out, the hostility towards Afghans, especially if they come through the channel crossing, if they come here irregularly, which is, again, not a crime. Claiming asylum is a human right. The means, the way you arrive you should not be penalized for that. But the UK government wants to criminalize and penalize people and put them in jail for up to 4 years. That includes Afghans. So it's like, the UK government is very comfortable in breaking international humanitarian laws, going against the Geneva Convention on Refugees, which we help adopted. So yeah, I'm really worried. I'm upset and kind of angry with the way things has gone. I thought things will get better. We will have more humane immigration and asylum policy. We will allow asylum seekers to work and not to live on £5 a day. We would not put people indefinitely in detentions. We will have, an ease at family reunification, make it more fair. At the moment, you can only bring your spouse and children under the age of 18. But now that's going to get, instead of allowing parents and other close relatives, now that's even your close family members has become more difficult because people will not be granted refugee status. So yeah, on one hand, the government is talking about this warm welcome, Operation Warm Welcome. On the other hand, they are criminalizing people and want to send people to any country who would have them, and want to offshore asylum seekers and immigration. So yeah, we need to make a stand, and perhaps the best way would be to write to our MPs saying this is not what we want. The British public are kind and compassionate, and we need to show solidarity with Afghans and as well as other refugees. And let's continue this conversation. And I encourage you all, please, to be aware and understand what's happening. The media focus has been sadly, fading away from Afghanistan. There was a lot of focus of the media on Kabul particularly, but there are 30 or so million Afghans living in other provinces. There's been a lot of executions, unjust arrests, and people have been mistreated. There's been retributions and revenge killing by the Taliban. And so we need to keep an eye, not only the situation around the girls' education, women's rights and human rights, but there are a lot of other things that is happening which the world needs to be aware of, and we need to somehow pressure the Taliban to be more accountable and to treat people with dignity and respect. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I look forward to answering any questions later on.
Thank you very much. Gulwali, I had a quick question for you. Obviously the theme, the focus of how us in the UK can help better support Afghans coming to the UK and having to have that traumatic journey. And I just wondered, how, as a community, how can we express our shared humanity? How can we build bridges?
I think in recent weeks, it's been great to see the British public actually donating to Care for Calais and other charities, because the people stranded at hotels in Manchester as well as in Birmingham and also in London had just came with the clothes on their back. Some of them didn't have shoes. They had to leave in a hurry, and we saw the condition and the situation at the Kabul airport. So we continue donating, giving to local charities and organizations who are helping refugees, money, clothes, whatever we can, shoes. Winter is coming. But we really need to put pressure on the government to provide adequate accommodation, because that is important. Help around integration with these young people, particularly young people with education, and older people with employments and other opportunities. And also an important aspect will be we need to find ways to work with the NHS and other charities around mental health support, because most of these Afghans, if not all, would have been traumatized. I have been traumatized just seeing it from here, let alone being on the ground, especially in Kabul, where people were fleeing for their lives. And so yeah, more mental health support and help resources for the traumatized refugees. But I think if you can get people into school and education and employment, that will give them a sense of normalcy. And I think a lot of these young Afghans, most of them will perhaps speak English because they've been working with British government. Some of them are just educated and skilled and qualified people. We need to help them to settle in. But I feel like the government says one thing, but by their actions, it's very different. They haven't had a plan. They knew this was going to happen. They were never really prepared for it. And people were treated with a lot of indignity in Kabul. And actually, 200 people lost their lives because there was a suicide bombing in Kabul airport. The British government at the time were advising people to go to the gates. So I hope there is some sort of inquiry to say what happened, what went wrong. The US, the Taliban, everyone knew there was an imminent threat of attack. But the British officials were advising Afghans to go to Abu Ghait, which was the place where people were getting into the military airport. So yeah, there are a lot of questions, unanswered questions, and also how the UK government keeps saying the Taliban will not be able to take over. Things are under control. The foreign secretary was on holiday, and senior civil servants was away. So I feel like there needs to be a way we can make the government accountable. I hope there could be a parliamentary inquiry into this to find out more. And we need to engage with Afghanistan, even though we may not like the Taliban. I certainly don't. We may not trust them, but we had to find ways to work with the Taliban for the betterment in improving the lives of Afghans who are in dire need of humanitarian assistance. And of course, in the UK, we need to continue doing what we could in terms of befriending, mentoring, hosting rooms for refugees, homes for refugees, and other charities actually need hosts across the UK to host refugees, because most of these refugees you can't really claim benefits because you have to be here for certain times, certain months. They don't know how to go about things. So sometimes they just need a few months of support where they can get on with their lives. And even refugees who are here long term, when they get their refugee status, they have 28 days to sort things out. And it's very difficult to sort your accommodation, jobs, and income, like support, financial support in 28 days. So yes, signing up to these charities, and if you have a spare room, perhaps also considering, fostering refugees, particularly unaccompanied minors. So there are a lot of things we could do. We shouldn't feel hopeless and helpless. Yes, the crisis is huge. And I definitely think we need to get the government in peace to understand that 5,000 a year is not enough. We need at least to take 10,000 a year, because we deported 15,000 Afghans in the last 10 years alone. So the 15,000 that we're going to take in the next few years is somewhat the same amount of people we have deported, because the government has been arguing Kabul or Afghanistan is safe. So there needs to be pressure, there needs to be accountability, and the UK really needs to stop with this anti-refugee bill, because it will criminalize refugees, Afghans amongst other refugees.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ali Ahmadi. He is an ethnic-born Hawaza, born in Iran after his parents emigrated from Afghanistan during the Civil War. His full bio will be posted into the chat, but thank you very much for joining us, Ali. Welcome. The floor is yours. You have about five to 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Alina. Thank you so much for having me. Just like to quickly say thank you for Initiative of Change for inviting me today. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the panel. So in regards to the story of my journey, if I was to start back all the way in 1997, where I was born, in the story that I'm going to discuss, I'll be slightly interweaving the story of my father as well, because I'm a second generation Afghan here in the UK, whereas he's a first generation Afghan. And it's likely that I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. So as I said earlier, born in 1997. So due to the turmoil, unfortunately, at the time, my family immigrated to Iran, and I just happened to be in a city called Qom. It's fairly well established, and it's on the border of Herat. So it just so happened that my family immigrated away from the war towards Iran. Jumped 2 years' time, and in 1999, my father moved to the UAE to find work. Now, due to the difficult working conditions that I think we're all aware of in these certain countries towards migrants and the way working in the treatment, he soon returned back to Iran in the year 2000. And from there, he was quite determined to set foot in Europe. Now, on the journey there from Iran to what is now the UK, that was his goal. He met a lot of interesting characters. He made friends. And it just so happens that actually I spoke to one of them. So a family friend of ours that he met in Italy, he's close to us right now, and he also lives in the same city that we do. And I was speaking to him recently about the journey that he and my father took, and he said that my father didn't know a word of Greek, Turkish, Italian, French, or English, but he knew exactly where he wanted to settle. And it was that determination and drive that helped him achieve his goal. And so from when he set off in Iran, in 6 months, he was in the UK. Now, by 2001, myself and the rest of the family had also arrived to the UK, and it was quite an interesting time for several reasons. So firstly, because I was only around 4 or 5 years old, I had not started primary school in Iran. So I was being exposed to a completely new language. And in a funny way, at that age and at that time, I couldn't fully articulate myself in Farsi, which is a language that we speak in Iran and in regions of Afghanistan. I couldn't articulate myself in Farsi, nor could I articulate myself in English. So my only support system during my first years in school or primary school or even nursery was my older brother. Now, fortunately, over time, I like to think that the child's brain is a miracle, it's quite malleable. So slowly but surely, I started to pick up the language. The second reason why this time was quite interesting was because, as Divya mentioned, I belong to an ethnic group called Hazaras. Now, despite being Afghan, I look conventionally East Asian, so I completely understand how that could be quite off-putting. So this created it quite early on in my life. This created a sense of warped sense of self-identity, because explaining to kids that I was Afghan, despite the TV showing Afghans look another way, it was challenging to say the least. And this goes on to my third point as to why were Afghans on TV. Now, around the time of 2001, it was unfortunately the 9/11 attacks. And the UK wasn't how it was. In 2001, the UK wasn't how it is now. There was prevalent discrimination in the UK. And I think back to my mother and sister, who were wearing hijabs. And so to think of the sort of pressure and stress they must have gone through as they stepped outside the house every single day, that's something that I think about sometimes, and I have the utmost respect and admiration for them for that. And so that was around about the times of 2001. From 2002 to 2014, it was quite a normal life, to be fair, just going through the education system. And that was until the summer of 2014. Now, summer of 2014 is quite a sort of special time for me, because that was the first time that I visited Afghanistan. Now, I can remember it so vividly. And it was quite a beautiful moment, really, because 15 years ago, my father had crossed that border to escape from Afghanistan. And now here we were as a family crossing it together, only this time to actually enter the country. So throughout the time I was there, it truly felt as though I was at home. And compared to a lot of the countries that I've visited, I genuinely believe that it was one of the most beautiful countries there was. From the sheets and layers of mountains, one after another, to the architecture that you see throughout the cities. It was an absolutely beautiful country. So it was quite heartbreaking to see what happened in 2021. Despite the hardship and struggle, Afghanistan was at a time where, over the 20 years, it was relatively headed towards stabilization. Even more so, I like to think that Afghanistan was actually headed towards prosperity, which is something that, for a war-torn country, we don't see. And I think, unfortunately, the Taliban took that away. So in the midst of turmoil, and when we was going through this, and when we were seeing the events taking over Afghanistan in the past month or so, it's easy to fall prey to emotions. I'd like to be the first one to say that I was feeling immense emotions of grief, and just like my emotions of grief, essentially. But I like to think that the best thing to do in these times of difficulties is to not let emotions take the best of us. I like to think that, just like my father, who was determined to set foot in the UK, I've come to learn that success requires a long-term vision with like-minded individuals. And with this sort of approach and mindset, I truly believe that one day Afghanistan will get the peace that it deserves.
Thank you very much. Ali, I had a quick question for you. You were saying how you're, before you were saying that, practical support that, we can also give, around the education, the accommodation. Obviously, is there anything else, we think, practical support that we're able to offer in terms of, ensuring integration and cohesion within our communities?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of cohesion and integration with communities, I think over the years, a lot of Afghan families before the events of 2021, we see Afghan families coming into the UK every year, and they integrate quite well. That was because of the pre-established families that were already there. So making aware of, I'm sure across every city there's a Tajik community, there's a Pashtun community, there's a Hazara community. I think it's the responsibility of these communities to make themselves aware, to make themselves known, to provide that support. And this is not to say that, only Hazaras can support Hazaras, only Tajiks. It's because, having a sort of a family or an individual or community who recognizes the hardship, I think it's absolutely paramount that these sort of communities make themselves aware for the refugees, put themselves out there to say that, we're a beacon of support. If you need anything, come to us. It's amazing that over the years, Afghans have managed to integrate themselves so successfully into the UK economy and the UK in general. And like I mentioned earlier in my sort of quick speech, it was these mentors that provided support and guidance that were absolutely crucial for me to just succeed and be where I am today. So that sort of mentorship and guidance from established community members who have incredible English, who know the way that the system works, who can provide support, like Gulwali said, who can help with home office applications, who can help with accommodation, who can help with job employment and job applications. It's the responsibility of us as community members to support these refugees and to accommodate them. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ali. That was fantastic. Our next speaker, I have the absolute pleasure in introducing a dear friend and colleague, Amina Khalid. Amina heads up our Sustainable Communities Programme, which focuses on supporting communities on a grassroots level, such as building trust between police and community leaders, interfaith dialogue, building cohesion and tolerance. One area that the programme addresses is the issues around migration and inclusion at a community and national and international level. Amina is originally from Yemen. She came to the UK from war-torn Somalia as a refugee when she was a teenager. Her full bio will be posted into the chat shortly. Welcome, Amina. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, over to you. You have about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Davina. It's so wonderful to be part of this conversation. Greeting to you all. And it's a lovely position to be in, you know, as one of a contributor rather than hosting. So I'm delighted that Davina is able to do that. I think the whole topic around Afghan and what's going on in Afghanistan and the crisis itself is really hitting home for me in many ways, and it's taking me back to that place when my family had left back home. I came to the UK at the age of 13 with my family, torn apart by the civil war and the persecution back home, and being a witness to the war and conflict firsthand, you know, hearing the ceasefires, seeing the bombings, houses being looted, women being raped and kidnapped. That really is quite something that one never quite totally, you know, forgets. It becomes part of the journey, the unknown journey in which all of us are somehow on. Of course, the direction of our boats, if I may use the boat as a metaphor, is different, but nevertheless that we all have a journey. And I think that really brings back to the reality of enabling us to understand what is going on in the world today, and especially more so in Afghanistan. Especially from a place of real lived experiences, and then of course coming to the UK, you know, a country where so many refugees have fled to find safety and security, that many may not have experienced the safety and security that they had imagined and dreamed of. I certainly know that in my case, it didn't quite work out in the way that I'd imagined as a young girl, you know, full of dreams and hopes and aspiration. And I recall that moment where Gulwali had shared how most families and children who left home with absolutely nothing other than their own clothing that they were wearing, you know, or they are wearing at the time. And that was certainly the reality in my own family. And not being able to say goodbye to your loved ones, and not knowing actually where one, you know, will end up, and some people never even make it, you know, being a witness to seeing bodies being thrown into the sea, and losing loved ones in that way. And then with us being fortunate enough to be able to be on the other side, and for me even more so to be able to share this story, a story of pain, but with that story also comes with hope, you know, a hope for better days to come. And I am really hopeful in the sense that, you know, having this platform where we are able to hear each other's stories and to really live into the humanity of each stories, that we can think more critically about the importance and the broader aspect of migration. There's a lovely saying which goes that it is the obligation of every person born in a safer room to open the door when someone in danger knocks. I think we must never ever forget that should be the case for all of us, that if we do have, you know, that door that we can open to another person to do that. And, you know, so many people, human rights are being denied. Nelson Mandela said that to deny people their human rights is the challenge to their very humanity. Who are we to be, you know, denying people's humanity, the basic human rights to be able to just open the doors and to take in people who are in desperate and dire need of support. And I think it's something that we can all play a part in making sure that that happens. You know, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I think it was Martin Luther King who said that. And, you know, with the rhetoric migration and refugees, there is so much hate and division that is caused by that. Recently, we've hosted an event in Finchley, and one of the keynote speakers was the acting chief of mission of IOM. And he particularly focused on the importance of framing the migration debate. I think that debate desperately needs to change, and it needs to change now. We don't have time to think of what to do next. What would you want someone to do if you were in danger and you had no place to go? Think about that, so put yourself in that position of the hundreds and thousands of people who are risking their lives. So for me, this is a topic and a reality that's still very much close to home. I must say, I feel incredibly both blessed and privileged to also be part of an organization that puts the spotlight on addressing such fundamental issues and holding individuals account to what's going on, and making sure that it's not just the people who wants to be in the room to listen to these stories, but also those who don't want to be in the room, who don't want to be around the table, and to engage them in a dialogue that is creative, that is inspiring, and that is about changing that narrative and working together collaboratively.
Thank you, Amina. Just while I have you, I just have a quick question to ask you. Because I know you, I've worked with you for a good number of years now. Can you just share with everyone just the work that you've been doing on the ground within the communities, trying to trying to get communities to integrate the cohesion, the intergenerational element? So just if you could just share with us.
So 90% of sustainable communities work is around engaging people on the ground. We're very conscious of making sure that when we are speaking of outreach, that we actually are reaching out into those individuals and into the communities, so that we're able to live into the lives of others. And at a community level, I think there's only so much that you can do, let's say, hosting events online, or even more so, hosting events in spaces where, those vulnerable individuals and communities are so unfamiliar. So for us, one of the key things is to be on the ground with them, to be able to do the training. So we conduct trainings, we conduct forums around some of these key issues that are affecting us every day in our lives, and actually focusing also that, yes, whilst it's important to be supporting refugees and migrants, but also that bringing the host communities' voices into that, and to make sure that it's the refugees and migrants and the host community working together to find solutions. And I think that also removes some of the fears and the division that we experience and see in our communities. The other ways in which we do that is also to make sure that creativity and art is brought into the element, because some of the conversations that we're having aren't easy. They're very sensitive, and not so many people find it easy to listen to, and even more so, those who share it don't find it easy to share. But having said that, I think it's fundamentally important that the likes of me, Gulwali and Ali and many more others, have a space where those stories can be shared, and that then we can really focus on finding practical and strategic ways in which we can work together. The other thing that I was going to say is actually, supporting already what's happening on the ground. So with established, organizations, I think at least 80% of our work is very much, in partnership with organizations who are already actively engaged alongside inspired individuals who want to make a change. So ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things, which we don't really often hear about.
Thank you very much, Amina. Thank you for your contribution. We did have a speaker, Dr. Nasimi. Unfortunately, he's been held up with some urgent work, so unfortunately he's not he's not able to join us today. I know we'll sadly be missed. Sadly, haven't missed his contribution. He's worked, with Afghan refugees and families since arriving in the country since 1999. So wealth of experience. Please do look him up. Liam will be able to put the link to his website, the Afghan and Central Asian Association, in the chat. So yeah. We do have about 45 minutes left. I'm just going to take just a couple of minutes of silence, but before I do that, thank you very much. And that seems like a very short 2 minutes, but I hope I wanted to have as much time for questions and a discussion as possible. So please, anyone who has a question or would like to raise their hand, please do so. Ricky, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, unfortunately. If you could just unmute yourselves.
Hi. I'm deeply moved by what everybody has said, deeply. But this is for Amina. Amina, I'm an artist and musician, and you were the only person that talked also about the arts and how important it is. And for the last 20 odd years, I've been working with the arts to try and raise the awareness of the arts and how important that is. And I think what you were talking about, reaching out, I forget who it said. Was it you that said about reaching out? If you have an outreach program, you need to reach out. I think that's so important. And so thank you for making that statement as well, which I feel I've often felt that the arts can tackle difficult issues in a very unthreatening manner, because a lot of people, especially in this country now, are very divided, and I think the arts are a way of breaking through that. And so I just want to make a case for that. The arts can really deal very specifically with issues around migration and the whole thing about dreams, and people's dreams and hopes. And just one last thing I'd like to say, on I think it's Friday the 8th of October, along with a tabla player, because I play Indian classical music as well, and I play sitar, and we're doing a concert for Afghan women. And hopefully Afghan, and so if anybody wants to go to the Shoot Festival website, and if you can't make it, if you can donate, that would be brilliant as well. So we're raising money that way. And I just deeply moved by Gulwali, is that how I say your name? And Ali, you deeply moved me. So thank you so much. And I hope we can work together sometime in the future, and stay safe.
If I may just say thank you so much, Ricky, for acknowledging the importance of the arts. I must say today is probably the only day where we haven't had music to begin with in our event. So even whilst we've been hosting all these virtual gatherings that, either at the beginning or at the end of each event, we've been having music relevant to the topic, but we couldn't find, the appropriate person to be able to share that piece of music with us. And the other thing is, the saying goes that where words fail, music speaks. And especially from those of us who come from a very traumatic background and have experienced, the worst that one can think of is that it's very easy to be able to articulate our journey in a more creative manner. And recently we have been reminded of that, where we hosted an intergenerational dialogue for social cohesion with migrants and refugees in Finchley. And during one of the sessions, we've asked the participants to to draw a river of life and to picture their journey as a river that goes, up and down, with all the ups and downs of life, and be able to really share their experiences. And I know that had we asked them, individually to get up and to share their personal journey of life, that would have been very different. But when you asked them to draw the river of life, and everybody got involved, the young, the old, and even we had, the policymakers and some of the key players in the community who've been able to do that. And one of the ones that really captured my heart so much was a young boy called Mudassir from Afghanistan. And when he drew his river of life, he had pictures of guns next to Afghanistan, and he put, stress for life, and then he put born in Afghanistan to the UK, and then in the UK, he just put, friends and family and safety. And so as he was presenting that back to the rest of the participants, we asked him the question of, what would you like us to know about Afghanistan beyond the conflict and the war? And he said, nothing other than that Afghanistan is a beautiful country. And he's a 10-year-old child who just wanted to communicate that. And so never really forget the stories that is behind those, atrocities that we are hearing of, and some of us are experiencing right now as we speak.
Could I ask one more question? Is that possible?
Yes, go ahead. I just got one other person.
Okay.
With their hands up.
I'm learning a piece of music. It's an Afghan folk melody called Anar Anar, and I looked up at the translation. It says Anar is a pomegranate. Am I correct? Is that correct? Yeah, is that?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Anar is pomegranate. And Afghanistan is very famous for Anar, particularly southern province of Kandahar produces the best pomegranates in the world.
Right. It's a beautiful melody. I hope you can come to the gig, because it is exquisite melody.
Excellent.
Anyway,
thank you. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. We had Suji. Is that how you pronounce your name? Sorry if not.
Sugi.
Sugi, sorry. My apologies.
I don't know whether it's a question or statement. I just want to, I'm interested in almost the resettlement scheme. How are they going to do that in UK? I found out that as I share the link that 15th of September that they introduced the benefit under their scheme to access Afghanistan refugees. They can access the benefit straight away. They don't need to do the HRT, the habitual residency test. My question is, does anyone know about the housing needs, and how are they going to place them? Because it's already that the demand for housing is very high in the UK, especially in London, and homeless is also very high. And how do the government going to tackle that one? Is there anyone know anything that beforehand about these schemes or any other project? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Gulwali, you have been unmuted, sure. So please go ahead.
So very good question. So basically, a lot of people are not aware that this new benefit thing, that they don't have to wait for the 3 months. But yeah, hopefully more people will get to know that the issue is accommodation. There is enough accommodation across the country, but the way the Home Office works is they have not convinced enough local authority or have not provided the funding for local authority to house these people. So for example, I live in Northamptonshire. West Northamptonshire initially agreed to take 150. Now they're taking about 300 Afghan refugees. North Northamptonshire is saying there's about 10 local towns here. They have not received anything from the Home Office, any requests for wanting to house people. So, for example, in the Northwest, Bolton, Oldham, Rochdale, these poorer local authority already have a huge number of Afghan or other asylum seekers, because it's cheap to house them there. and the Home Office usually give contracts to private agencies, and they make money out of people's, people's situations. And these accommodations are not fit for purpose. But there are other local authorities, for example, in the whole of southwest region of the UK, there is less asylum seekers than there is in Bolton. So for these Afghan refugees, for things to work, the Home Office needs to provide proper funding to local authorities, work with landlords and work with private companies and associations, housing association, to provide accommodation. Because at the moment, the 6,000 people will be in hotels for a long time because they haven't figured it out how to go about it. We have over 300 or so local authorities. I'm sure there are local authorities who could take 100, some might take 50, some might take 300. It depends on the size of the local authorities and the support they could provide. So I think if the Home Office could talk to all the local authorities, provide the necessary support and help and funding, I'm sure they will take these refugees on because, and then once they settle in, they can get more help and support through the national scheme of universal credit and others. But at the moment, I have friends who brought their loved ones, their spouses and their children. They're just surviving in one-bedroom accommodation because they'd rather stay in their own house than stay in hotels. So yeah, accommodation is an area which the government doesn't have a clear plan as what they're going to do about it. People will be in hotel for the foreseeable future. So it seems like people will be in hotels for indefinitely, which is not healthy, which will cause more distress and more problems, because people need to be in the community so they can connect with people and get to know people, build these relationship and friendship and go into normal kind of livings.
Thank you, Gulwali. Ibrahim, you have your hand up. You are muted, sorry.
I want to ask all people who I think especially they are from UK. I'm right now in Paris. I connected from Paris. Ask a question. It's about what's the Western country who they are hosting the Afghan refugee. Mostly in the recent refugee are coming from Afghanistan, and we have other refugees who they are from other countries, and they grew up in Pakistan, in Iran, like Ali Ahmadi, who was born in Iran, and I also was born in Iran, with total different culture and lack of know about our society. And there is a huge prejudice between those people. They don't know each other. And also we're gonna start a workshop for that, to have a dialogue between each other. What the Western country can do for the young refugee, that they can have a dialogue instead of the prejudice who they just hearing from their parents or their friends belong to which ethnic group they are.
Thank you so much. Amina does a lot of work around this, so please, if you have anything to add, Amina.
Davina, were you particularly thinking of the policy side?
Yes, the policy side, yeah.
So I've recently been working with an organization called KAISID, which is the intergovernmental organization that promotes dialogue to build peace in conflict areas. And it does this by enhancing understanding and cooperation between people of different cultures and different faiths. And the center was founded in Austria. But the key fundamentals of that is really focusing on, going beyond the sort of dialogue that we need to have, but really strategically focusing currently, especially in terms of what we are doing, is around policy making. So we've recently just finalized a policy brief which focus in 3 very fundamental areas, which I think is relevant to all refugees and migrants. And the first area is trust building in local communities. As we've heard so much already that trust is broken, and it needs to be built, and it needs to be built from the ground up. So that policy brief is particularly focused on how that is done, using successful stories, including some of the work that is done through Sustainable Communities Program and others. And the other policy brief is focused on changing the narrative. Again, that's something that's been mentioned, being able to frame the migration debate more correctively and more humanely as well, so that we're able to see the humanity in each stories that we hear. And then the third one is around inclusive education. Gulwali mentioned about the importance of education. It's one thing being able to have a universal free education, but how do you enable newly Afghanis and other refugees settle and be part of that education system that can make them feel welcomed and can make them understand and engage in a space where they can actually enjoy learning. I remember that was not the case for me at all. Education in this country was very difficult, starting secondary education at the age of 13 and feeling that, considering that I didn't speak a word of English, and with all of that, what followed, the racism and the Islamophobic attitude that went alongside it. As I was listening to Ali sharing, the story about his sister and wearing the hijabi, that was my story, where I would have a young student just pull my headscarf off, go home to your country, we don't want you, you refugee. That was the rhetoric, and that disrupted the flow of my education. And then inside the actual classrooms, to have, teachers who actually understand what it means to have a refugee from a very traumatic background is very important. We talk about training. I think those delivering the training are very important, that those are individuals who understand, the topic beyond reading the books, but who have some kind of lived experience that they can really relate to each and student that comes into that classroom, and can allocate the right space and time that is needed for them to learn, an environment that is conducive. Those are the things that we don't really often talk about. It's not just about being able to give free education. It's way beyond that. The training needs to be provided by the right training. The teachers need to be the right teachers, and possibly teachers with, but whether they're of Afghani backgrounds or refugee backgrounds, or those who really specialize in an area where they understand the impact of trauma, they understand migration from a first-hand experience. And actually there are so many qualified Afghanis and other refugees that can easily take on those posts. So open the doors to the opportunities for these people to come in and to be able to educate both, the students from the host community, as well as the migrants and refugees coming in. And just to say that those policy briefs are put on the chat, so please do have a look and share it with your wider network. And this is going to be, presented to policymakers as well as grassroots. So it's currently being disseminated wide and afar.
Thank you very much, Amina. That was a great response. I just want to acknowledge that Gulwali has had to leave. He had to leave at 1:30, so apologies, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, but we all hope everyone appreciated and understood his contribution. Ahmed, I think you wanted to share some contribution. Please go ahead.
Unfortunately, Gulwali has left. He made it was very informative. A few comments have been made. Now, my position, first of all, is that I'm a British-born Muslim. So going back to what Amina said in the chat before, how do we deal with this intersection, this very, very complex situation of Muslims, migration, being British, funding, all this. So I find that like Amina had just said, I feel like a British-born Muslim who understands the different cultures, who understands British politics, global politics, and all the different sensitivities and complexities, is in a very powerful position. So I feel I'm in a very powerful position. Plus, I also discuss on LinkedIn very complex subjects. So to use my position and power to get involved in dialogue, as Amina said, with government or people who work in government, plus with local communities, plus with organizations like Institute of Change and other organizations that I talk to, is dialogue, and to understand how everybody feels about this complex situation. For example, I can also quite confidently say I know how some British people feel about the Afghan situation and about migrants. So I look at it from every angle, because I am engaged in dialogue with very different people, and some people's views people won't like, but I am prepared to listen, because when you put yourself in the middle as a bridge, then you are taking dialogue from both sides, comments from both sides on a very heated situation. For example, on LinkedIn, I'm regularly looking at comments regarding the Taliban in Afghanistan. So what the world is saying is that everybody in Afghanistan is Taliban. So it's very important for what we might call the everyday people of Afghanistan to have a voice. And there are many on LinkedIn, many ladies, many professionals on LinkedIn who say we are also a voice. And then going back onto the refugee situation and the housing situation, there was a very fair comment about homeless people in Britain and about lack of funding. And in those areas, now I'm from the Kirklees area, around Huddersfield, Leeds. So a lot of the refugees, they are, to put it quite bluntly, plonked into areas where there are already financial problems in terms of government funding. Now, government funding, when we can spend millions and billions on war, why can't we spend millions and billions on housing, homeless, education? But this also goes back to the situation generally in the UK, because there are a lot of non-Muslims in the UK who have concerns about refugees and all of this, which is like a separate subject, but it's important to have a fair dialogue. So as Amina said, someone like myself is in a powerful position to have a dialogue on all the different sides of a very complex situation. And I think these kind of platforms and dialogue is very important, where you see all the different sides of arguments. And I think Ali Ahmadi, as a Hazara, we also have to be aware of how we have to admit there is a lot of tribalism in Afghanistan, tribalism. It's not all about Pashtuns, it's not all about Taliban. One is to be aware of the situation and to allow yourself input from different parties and perspectives, and then you come out with solutions. I think is very important. So overall, like to say, Ali Ahmadi, I'm aware of the Afghanistan politics. I'm a anti-terrorism extremism researcher. I'm aware of the Taliban. I'm aware of the concerns over here said by certain people here about how will these people live over here? Are they Taliban? Are they this, that? So it is a very complex situation. But going back onto peace has to come through dialogue and understanding and listening, and then answering people. You say, look, this is the situation. They're not all Taliban. All Taliban are coming here. And my job as an anti-extremism, anti-terrorism campaigner is to work on that level as well. So yes, dialogue is very important, and it's also very important to be aware of how everybody sees this situation, because there might be a few people here, quite a few people here in this chat, but the British public, and I'm a member of the British public, is also very active on social media, on Twitter, on a lot of negative things regarding Afghanistan. The other thing with Afghanistan, which is quite unfortunate, it seems like, unfortunately, due to global politics, there is a lot of people out there who want to starve Afghanistan, or what they will say, they want to starve the Taliban. But by starving the Taliban, you end up starving Afghanistan, innocent people. So it is a very complex situation. And thank you for my comments.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Greatly appreciated. Martin Spencer Brown, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the comments of Abraham, because Martin and myself and Abraham, we work together, and at present, the dialogue that he wanted to establish or make available on a fairly simple level was between young Afghan refugees right now, because he was, and it didn't quite come across when he spoke, because he's very worried about the the very polarized positions and historical feelings that come out in the social networks. And so he had, Abraham, if I can speak for him, has this idea of having occasions when a low level, sort of discreetly, without discussing politics and without discussing religion, young Afghans can sit down and just talk face to face or around a small table in a confident environment where they're expected to listen to one another and to listen to one another's history and experience. And he wants to create that sort of space.
Paris.
We're in Paris.
Thank you very much. You know, Initiatives of Change has a history of doing this. Amina, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Davina, I was just thinking as I listened to Martin and what Ibrahim was trying to articulate, that actually, you know, for us, discrete conversations are fundamentally important. At Initiative of Change, we do not get involved in political debates because we want to remain neutral and we want to focus on doing the right thing rather than looking at, you know, who is right and who is wrong. It's Initiative of Change focuses on, you know, starting the change with oneself. And by the sound of what you just shared, Martin, thank you very much, on Ibrahim's vision in terms of what he wants to do, is we facilitate spaces where that can happen. And I make an open invitation to Ibrahim and to yourself, Martin, and to any of the teams around you to enable that to happen. And let's explore Sustainable Communities Program to host such a gathering where, you know, it is totally discreet and it's created a space where people can be not only safe enough, but also brave enough to share, you know, some of their thoughts around this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a great contribution. I think and I hope Dr. Nasimi, you've just joined us.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I know you were very busy man, and so I did give your apologies for not coming earlier, but I'm so glad you're here. Over the moon, delighted that you've joined us. I just wondered if you're able to share just, you know, for 5 minutes, just about yourself or your story, or the organization that you've set up. Please go ahead.
So hello everyone, and I do apologize. I'm very sorry because I had another meeting with the Lewisham MP while I am in Hounslow, but the member of parliament in Lewisham, they are still in touch with us. I came to the United Kingdom with my family and small children on the back of a lorry in a refrigerated container almost 22 years ago in 1999. If you remember, after we arrived in 1999, in the year 2052, Chinese, they took a similar journey, but then they stay in the container longer than us. They spent 34 hours. That's why they all found dead. And we were lucky because we spent 9 hours in the container, but even 9 hours was a very, very difficult time and difficult journey for a family with small children, small baby, in a dark and cold environment. But once we arrived in the UK in 1999, then I was facing a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. I couldn't speak a word of English. I didn't know how to apply to local college or take or enroll my children to the local school or register at the local GP or filling application to the social services. So then I realized there is a strong need for a community provision to support other people who are in a similar position that I was at the time after we arrived in the UK. Then we established the Afghanistan and Central Asian Association in Lewisham with the support of the local authorities and the local council almost 21 years ago to support integration of those people who are new into the United Kingdom. We spent 17 years in Lewisham, while Lewisham wasn't the right location. As you know, London is very diverse and very interesting city, different communities located different location. But then after 17 years, we moved to West London because West London is the right place for the huge over 100,000 refugees from Afghanistan living in West and Northwest London. But then when we came here, we realized there wasn't any similar community provision for the past 20, 25 years in West London. And it was a huge gap where we then decided to launch a community center in Hounslow. So as I said, the main mission of the organization is to support integration and promote shared values through educational activities such as English language classes, women empowerment projects, mentoring support, free legal advice on housing, employment, immigration. Since the crisis started in Afghanistan almost 1 month ago. So this center became the main contact point for the British media. We had over hundreds of British media for the past 1 month. At the same time, 500-600 people were queuing in the morning from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. They were waiting outside from 5 a.m. until 10 a.m. until we opened the door. And then we call everyone. We distributed tickets, and then we call people to come and sit down and meet the volunteers who were working on filling application forms. And those people who were queuing, they are the British Afghan people living in the United Kingdom. They come here to get support, how they can bring their families from Afghanistan. But at the same time, because of the strong media coverage, then we receive a lot of donation from the local people, where we then started distributing those donations to different hotels where the new arrived people they are staying. So with the support of volunteers, we managed to cope the huge crowd. Those people who come to the center for advice and guidance and information, how they can bring their families. But at the same time, with the support of the volunteers, we managed to distribute more than 340 food containers of donation. And then with the support of the local people, we set up a tent because we don't have a storage. It's a big tent outside the office set up where every day people, they are bringing donation, which includes clothes, toiletries, shoes, this kind of things. Yeah. Now we are making sure that the new arrived people, after they will leave the hotels, will have access to services, the same services that we did in the past 21 years. But then the limited resources sometimes make the life of the organization quite difficult, how we can cope with a huge demand. But we received some donation from BBC Children in Need, from City Bridge Trust, Tudor Trust, Henry Smith, and then we are aiming to use those donations employing member of staff. Well, I think that this is the most impactful and the most effective way of using the donation that we receive from the British Trust. And hopefully from next week, we will resume and start the activities, educational, mentoring, as well as the legal advice by Zoom, as well as face-to-face, asking people to come to the center. So this is the brief information I was trying to provide and give you. And if you have any question, please ask me if you have. Otherwise, thank you very much for inviting me. I do apologize for keeping you waiting for me.
That's okay. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you very much for your contribution. You guys are doing valuable work, so please don't worry. And I hope that the volunteers and the fundraising is successful, and you're able to help more people. I'm going to open the floor up to see if anyone has any questions. We have about 10 minutes left. I do want to use a couple of minutes just to wrap up, but if you do have any questions, please put your hand up or put your name in the chat facility, and I can call on you.
If I can just add, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, yes, now we are all aware of the situation. I think the aim now is how we move forward and look after the people who have decided to leave Afghanistan, and even those in Afghanistan. How do we move forward? I think that's very, very important. How do we all work together as a community, as a British community, and as a global community? How we all work together for the betterment of Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan and the global community in general, which is what my work is. And how do we connect to other organizations? I mean, I know Initiative of Change is a huge organization, but there are still many more individuals out there who we can connect to and work together and build bridges. And as a Muslim, I know I'm kind of going back to this whole Taliban thing, but we also need to deal with that situation as well and have a very honest conversation, which I know due to political correctness, some people won't want to talk about, but I believe I'm in a position to talk about that, but not for today.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you, Ahmed. We only have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask Amina and Dr. Nasimi if they have anything else to add. Amina, I'll come to you first.
I just wanted so I've been reflecting on your question that you asked, Gulwali, which was how can we build bridges with newly arrived Afghan refugees? It's building bridges with everybody who's we've burned bridges with. But in order for us to do that, I think it's fundamentally important to understand how those bridges have been burned in the first place. What caused those bridges to burn, and how has trust been broken across the world's divide. I think my work with Initiative of Change constantly reminds me that, and it's also a personal question that I ask myself, what are the kind of bridges that needs to be built? How have they been burned? What are the ways in which we can do that, starting with oneself? The other thing is around, trust building as a whole. There could be no relationship without trust. And the most important thing is to actually understand that, whilst it may be very easy to build trust with certain individuals, that it's actually very difficult to build trust with certain individuals, but actually very easy to break down those trust. So, how do we ensure that, the trust that we have built with certain communities that has taken us for a very long time, how do we honor those trusts? And how can we, build further trust with communities who are desperately needing to build trust, amongst us and others who may be in a very difficult situation. And then I just wanted to lastly come back to the point about, engaging with the non-converted. I think that's probably the most important, but yet the most difficult part of all of our work, is how to engage with the non-converted, those who don't want to be around the table. And it just reminded me of the moment when we hosted our World Refugee Day a couple of years ago, where we've had a member from UKIP alongside with Lord Alfred Dobbs and, a Syrian. And one of the comments that was made by the UK person, whose name I will not mention, was that actually these Syrians have just come to sponge off the government, and they're not really here to contribute. Little did she know that the person who was sitting next to her happened to be a qualified a doctor and a highly honored individual, not only in their community back home, but also in that whole of society. So again, really understanding, you know, the person who is next to you before you make assumptions. And I think it's something that we also need to remember each and individually, you know, what that means when we are trying to engage with others and build trust.
Thank you very much, Amina. Beautifully put, as always. Dr. Nasimi, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I think the best approach and the best way to support the new arrived community, working in partnership, will be much more effective way to cope this crisis. Also, maybe we can organize a face-to-face meeting in our center. Maybe some of you can start volunteering with us on different projects. We need people to start teaching English language classes. We need people to start working on women outreach project. We need people to start just helping the clients on basic counseling and mentoring support. For example, today I had two officers from one of the deportation center. They come here asking me if I can help those people, about 7 people from Afghanistan. They are in a detention center. They're supposed to be deported back to Afghanistan, but they said now because of the situation, they will release those 7 people. They said how you can help them. I said that we don't have the resources. Maybe you can ask your detention director to give us some money to employ a part-time coordinator on mentoring support, mentoring project. So my message to you and to all of other friends who are here today at this meeting, please just pop in our office for a cup of tea, and then we will have a face-to-face conversation. We will see how we can help each other in a practical way. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope we will speak to you again very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Nasimi. So that's about it for this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. If you could please fill in the link to fill in the SurveyMonkey questionnaire about our event, and if you have any feedback, that would be great. Thank you very much. And we also have put in the chat the link to the fundraiser as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.